A lot of people are more interested in the wealth that they can gain as a company rather than the person that they hire.
It's challenging, but like being honest with them and putting the effort in and kind of giving them what we wish we would have had at the same situation.
Love watching buildings be built, and it's fascinating, and every single project is a completely different venture.
That's what I would suggest to any woman getting into this field.
Finally found the niche of BIM, VDC, and laser scanning, the technology, and all the logistics side of it.
How can we begin to help improve and solve some of those?
Being a woman in a man's industry, you have a different perspective.
I'm fortunate enough that my manager, who is a male, supports me all the time and makes sure that, I'm compensated the way that I need to be.
If I'm working on a project that's 250,000 square feet, do I have to be smart and rely on the resources that I have?
Like things like PlanGrid and Destiny.
The RTC 360. To register my data Cyclone, I use Leica, we use Faro, Navisworks, Revit.
There's more opportunities that aren't showcased as much, and I think just teaching and constantly reaching and going through the education paths and going to colleges, going to technical schools, and doing stuff like this, doing panels and like showcasing women in the industry, and that like we are here and we're valuable.
First of all, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for our host, Matthew. As an event organizer, I work on Geo Week, which is formerly the International LiDAR Mapping Forum, SPAR 3D Expo and Conference, and AEC Next. I know what a huge undertaking it is to host an event, let alone do it within 60 to 90 days. So thank you so much, Matthew, and thank you all for being here. My name is Leslie Rosa. I am the sales manager of GeoWeek and geoweeknews.com. We are an online news resource that is for the geospatial, 3D tech, and AEC space, as well as GeoWeek, which is a live event taking place in February 2022 in Denver, Colorado. I'd like to first start by having each of our panelists introduce themselves.
Hello everyone, my name is Christy Porter. I'm the CEO of 19 Architecture. We focus mostly on commercial architecture in the industry. We do both ground up and commercial TI. We also do have full scope for interior design as well. And we also run and do other portions of the industry, sorry. So we do service, full service for clients.
So I'm Ivy Frank. I work for DPR Construction. I am a VDC, or we also use FTG, field engineer. So I do a lot of reality capture for the company. Been there for a year, and we're a GC across the U.S.
My name is Helena Gabru. I work as a virtual design and construction specialist at Omicron. We are an integrated design, construction, and development firm based out of Vancouver, British Columbia.
I am Madison Galloway. I am also a VDC coordinator, and sorry, you said get close. I am also a VDC coordinator. I work for Horde Construction. We are a large GC out of the Southeast, and my primary focuses are laser scanning and 3D and 4D site logistics and animations.
Great, thank you. First to start, how did you get into the industry and line of work that you're in, and specifically if you had somebody that inspired you or something specific that inspired you to start your career?
So for me, growing up, I always wanted to be an architect. Ever since I was really young, I just was so encaptured by buildings. But I had a cousin who was about 15 years older than me who pursued interior design, and I had never seen a woman in the industry at all, or knew of that. And coming from where I came from, I didn't know of anyone that went to college or graduated from college, so to see her pursue that, it really inspired me to get into it and pursue it. So I really just used her as kind of my inspiration to pursue an education in architecture and interior design and learn as much as I could about the industry. But I really am thankful for her leading the march for our family and being the first to graduate from college.
So mine is a little abnormal. When I was in middle school, How I Met Your Mother was my favorite show. Ted Mosby was an architect, and I loved his character, and I started digging into architecture then. So when I was going into high school, I decided to go to a vocational high school, take technical drafting, and then I've been AEC since. I'm not an architect. I've kind of fell into different things, but that's kind of what got me on the roll. So.
I guess this might be a little funny story, but I grew up in Dubai, and I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Burj Al Arab. It's built on a man-made island, and when I was about 8 or 9, this was like 2000, 2001, my mom took us there, and the whole time my question was, how do you have this huge of a building floating on water? And she was like, I don't know, go figure it out. And so I decided to pursue structural engineering. I never got over that hump. I'm still trying to figure out how they did it. But from there, I did my undergrad in civil engineering, my postgrad in project and construction management, specializing in BIM. And how I actually got into that is we have a professor at UBC. Her name's Dr. Cheryl Staub-French, and she was such an inspiration, made sure I networked with the right people, pushed me into BIM and VDC, and here I am today.
My story's not as fun, but I have always just been good at math, and so I actually just kind of asked my calculus teacher in high school, you know, what should I go to college for? And he said engineering, and I was like, you know what, that sounds fun. And so I got into first electrical engineering, and that was a hard no for me. And I kind of just stumbled upon civil engineering and architectural engineering. And then I started getting into, I've always had a love for buildings. And I wanted to be an architect, but I'm not that creative. And so I finally found the niche of BIM, VDC, and just kind of took off from there with laser scanning, the technology, and all the logistics side of it.
Great, thank you. Can you talk a little bit more about the 3D or new technologies that you all use, both from a hardware and software perspective?
Sure, I can go. At a GC, we kind of use a bit of everything. We use Leica, we use Faro, we use Navisworks, Revit. Me specifically, I use the RTC 360. I use the Cyclo World. I use to register my data Cyclone. I kick it out and review it. And yeah, we use drones as well. I just got certified, so that's exciting. I haven't taken anything off yet, but we'll get there. But yeah, we use a bit of everything, and that's something I really like about where I work is you get to try so many different softwares. You don't have to just pick something and stream it. I do, but that's not necessary, and that's like a really cool experience to have. So.
When I joined Omicron, I'd say maybe about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, we did have experience with point clouds, but we were contracting that work out. And so we had a project that was coming in where we had to scan over 120,000 square foot. And so I just came up with the idea, why don't we just buy one? And we decided to get a Leica BLK 360. It's very, it's cheaper compared to the other ones. It's a nice kind of start when you get into the laser scanning world. But besides the hardware, we use kind of similar to IV, Revisto, Recap, Revit, the whole Autodesk bundle. We use things like PlanGrid and Destiny. Yeah, that's kind of about it.
I mean, yeah, we pretty much use all the same. We, for our laser scanning purposes, we have a Faro focus, and that's pretty much, we don't do a whole lot of laser scanning yet, and that's what we're trying to dive more into and get more projects on our hands of, because we primarily do concrete pours and sleeve verification with our laser scanning, but we want to dive more into as-builts and et cetera. So, but we also use Revisto, all of Autodesk. I use Fuser, Twinmotion, all that kind of stuff for the logistics side.
I think I have a unique perspective. So starting my company, I started it 3 years ago. I've been in the industry about 20 years now, and I worked at a worldwide architecture firm for the bulk of my career. So I went from using the best technology that's out there for architects and engineers to not being able to afford that software for my team. I mean, I started the company with whatever savings I had acquired, and architects, to be honest, don't get paid that well. So, and so with the savings that I had, I needed to simplify it to back to what I was working on in 2005. And it was an interesting experience recognizing that I could still 3D model. I could still use 3D Max and V-Ray and all the 3D platforms that we needed, but Revit is a very expensive program. scanning software is very expensive, as we've all talked about. They come with fees. And so one of the big things that I had to do was rely on other companies for scanning. I had to rely on other companies for bigger and more complex models. So for instance, if I'm working on a project that's 250,000 square feet and the client wants a full exterior and interior model, I'm probably not going to be able to do that in-house with the computer software that I can actually afford. And being only 3 years old, I know that our goal is to achieve the greater software and to work to that. But I also don't want to go broke as a company before I get started. So I have to be smart and rely on the resources that I have, reach out to the experts, and hire companies like Nexus. We had a project that was very complex and on a hill and required a lot of structural engineering that us as architects need to make sure is legit so the building doesn't fall. And I know that that's not something I'm capable of doing and can't afford to do on our own, so I need to reach out to the experts. So I think that's like the weird thing for me, is to go from using Revit and all the best technology to go back to simple CAD at first, which is hard. But it's just the reality of new companies that are coming in, needing to rely on each other. And I think that's the blessing, is we can work with companies and work hand in hand and try to get to where we need to be for our projects.
Great. Can you talk a little bit about being a woman in the AEC and tech space, which is typically seen as a male-dominated space? In what ways did you really have to push through to be in the positions that you're in today?
I'll break the ice on this one. One of my former companies, I interviewed, I thought it went well. The person went out to my professor and was like, hey, give me 2 year students, we're hiring. I got the job, I was really excited, and my professor called me afterwards and was like, hey, I want to let you know, he didn't want to hire you because you're a woman, and he was scared that you wouldn't be able to maintain your composure or take care of the situation in the field because it's male dominated. I had already taken the job, so I was kind of in a pickle, and I just felt like I had to prove something. Like, I already worked 2 times harder, but when you already know that you're going against a wall that hired you, it definitely was challenging. So, and that's just one story out of many of that we have. So,
Go ahead. I guess, speaking from experience and hearing other people's stories, I think there can be a tendency to be undermined as a woman in this industry and kind of have unconscious biases about, what we can and can't handle things on the field, like Ivy mentioned. But at the end of the day, all you could do is work twice as hard, prove what you need to prove, get your work done. And, at times we might have different experiences on site compared to men, but, you just keep pushing, prove yourself, and that's kind of what I would suggest to any woman getting into this field.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because a lot of women I know actually quit the industry after a certain amount of time because of the constant pressure. There's just this constant pressure that we need to prove that our analysis is accurate, and we don't need someone else to back up why I know that, that architectural detail or that structural detail is or isn't going to work. And I've shown up to so many meetings with a male counterpart, and they thought that, I was just the decorator or the designer and not the person in charge. And or I've been questioned on the spot more times than I can count and had to explain my knowledge behind that structural detail or that architectural detail or that design decision. And it's something that I've come to notice more and more. I think recently, having my own firm, as a female, I show up to job interviews or present RFP proposals, and a lot of people are like, well, who's the architect on your staff, or who's on your team, and who's going to be the project manager? And I feel like I get quizzed like I'm back in college for, architecture. And it's just holding your ground and, being calm and answering the questions and proving to them that I know what I'm doing or I wouldn't be there. But also a humility in it, because I don't know everything, and I keep intelligent people that have been in the industry longer on my team, because there are going to be situations that we don't know. But I think like you mentioned, just encouraging women to not be intimidated by the fact that it is male dominated, to know that you could be just as successful and not be discouraged by the comments or the frustrations or the lack of confidence someone might have in you. It just gives you an opportunity to prove that they can have that confidence in you. But I know that starting the company and starting any company is also something that I know a lot of women are intimidated by in the commercial realm. There's a lot of female interior designers and architects that focus just on residential, but in the commercial industry in our area, and I'm based in California, I only know of one other female CEO of a commercial architecture firm. It's a really big state, and we all kind of know each other. I hear it a lot, and so if we could encourage anyone out there, it would be to just be confident in yourself and your capabilities, and there are plenty of people out there, both male and female, that'll support you and trust you in that journey.
Yeah, to piggyback off of that, I mean, we all know our worth, and we know that unfortunately we have to work twice as hard to be considered equal, unfortunately, in some situations. And I previously did work for a woman-owned firm, and I got way more pushback than I do currently now, where I'm the only woman on my team. And thankfully, I do have my managers who are all men. They do support me way more than I ever received previously at a woman-owned company. I thought joining that, it's going to be fantastic. We're all going to be equal. But like when I was hired on, I know the male counterpart that was hired on at the exact same time as me was paid $5,000 more than my salary. So it's a little heartbreaking to see that, but it's finding a good group of allies, and like us women, we're going to be allies with each other, but also finding our managers or any kind of man that's in the company to help us and show that we are worthy and that we do know what we're doing.
Great, and kind of to piggyback on that question, what are some of the challenges or one of the main challenges that women face in these industries, and how can we begin to help improve and solve some of those?
Very loaded question.
Very loaded question. Very loaded question.
I mean, my first thought is just finding someone or like having allies that will show that we shouldn't be undermined because we are women, because we are amazing creatures and we do know what we're doing and we work very hard and we do have the same degrees as most men in the room, unfortunately, and we have the same experience, like it's unfortunately a challenge that we should not face, but we do. And it's just a slow progression. I mean, I'm sure most women know from 50 years ago, it's a completely different atmosphere for some, and unfortunately for not some. We've had personal discussions and seen where we've come from, and we all have different routes and different paths that we've traveled, but we're all still fighting to be the best in our field.
Yeah, I think one main thing I'd say is, there's unequal pay, right? That's kind of the obvious one. Someone with your experience, your educational background will make, a lot more money than you when he's a male and you're a female. And then I also think that, there's a lack of representation when it comes to leadership as well, right? If there's not someone that really looks like me in that position, you start to imagine, maybe I don't belong there. Maybe that is a space that I won't be able to hold. But, like she mentioned, I think it's important to find that ally within your company. I'm fortunate enough that my manager, who is a male, supports me all the time and makes sure that, I have the right space and, I'm compensated the way that I need to be. Yeah.
Yeah, I think representation is huge. Something we had spoke about yesterday. I did ACE mentoring when I was in high school, and I had a civil engineer woman who was badass, and I was like, that's who I want to be. Like, that is my goal, and that was another pusher. But now, when I recently relocated to an area where ACE mentoring is a thing, and I'm going back and doing the same thing because they need to be supported and shown that you can get here. It's not hard. I mean, it's not easy. It's challenging, but like being honest with them and putting the effort in and kind of giving them what we wish we would have had at the same situation. So
yeah, I feel like it's an interesting avenue and a complex question. And being in the industry for almost 20 years, I've actually seen such a drastic change in how many women are in the industry over the last 20 years. And I've seen a progression of more and more women, and I think social media and a lot of different things have helped. Education, more women are aware that it's not male dominated. They're not going to, be isolated. They're not going to be alone. But one of the areas where I've seen the most growth is engineering. 20 years ago, I didn't know any civil or structural or MEP engineers, and now I'm working with them all the time, and a lot of it is, that mentoring, that education. But, speaking to the unequal pay, I basically had to start my own company to be paid properly. Working for a worldwide firm, you would think they would be at the forefront of equality, but they really weren't. And I recognized that, and I sucked it up because the experience and the knowledge that I was gaining was worth more than the frustration. I mean, I was there for 8 years, and they hired in a male intern just out of college, and he made $10,000 more than me after I had been there for 8 years. And in the pit of my stomach, I had to know that because I was his project manager. I had to know what his hourly rate was, and it hit me in my stomach and made me realize, well, my time's here is short. I will not be here that much longer, because a lot of people are more interested in the wealth that they can gain as a company rather than the person that they hire. And so I realized if I wanted to be valued, either I need to go to a place where they do value me, or I need to start my own company. And obviously that's what I did, because it is just hard to find. Even if you're a male, regardless of whether you're male or female, there's a lot of companies that are just about the dollar, just about the profit. They don't value us. And so those are the things that, affect us. And we just want to raise awareness and, make others aware, other females, and just give them that courage to pursue it.
And building on that question as well, have you seen a lot of change, or how much change have you seen in regards to diversification and equality within the spaces that you're working in?
I haven't been doing this long enough to answer that question accurately. I have always been the only female doing what I've done through the get-go. When I was doing technical drafting in high school, that was the only opportunity I had to work with other women, and there was 3 of us, but the class was 30. And then when I got my first job as a HVAC drafter, I was the only female, and it's kind of been that going. But like she says, I think more people are coming into it. Like, LinkedIn is a great place to find other support, and I see people, maybe not in my company, maybe not in the US, but other places in the UK who are doing what I do that are female. So I think that's a really powerful tool to kind of address that and look at it.
Yeah, I would say the same. I haven't been in the industry long enough to say that, but, I do suggest that you kind of look around in this room, and there's, I don't know, maybe 200 attendees almost, and there's like 15 women here. So I think, we could have, maybe, I don't know, just stating the obvious here, but, I haven't been in this industry long enough, so I don't want to do it the disservice and say that things haven't changed, but I think we do have a long way to go, and I hope, everyone in the position that you are create that space and then forward those opportunities to women.
Yeah, I think I kind of already talked about it a little bit, but I think I would want to speak on the pressures that women face. I kind of touched on it earlier, that drive us out of the industry, because I started out knowing so many women, and by the time I hit year 15, 80% of them had quit, or they went to sales, or they went to other aspects of the industry, because in our architecture world, you're working anywhere from 60 to 120 hours a week, because a deadline's a deadline, and commercial construction's expensive, and a day gone could be $1 million sometimes, and that doesn't fit the typical pattern of women wanting to, pursue different avenues, and there's so much pressure on us. And some firms would fire women for getting pregnant, or talk about, are you going to have a kid? And I know that might not be something a lot of people in this room can understand, but it's an unfair pressure to not get married and not have children if you're going to be successful in the architecture world, especially for commercial. And so I knew a lot of women that knew that if they wanted to do that, they would have to quit the industry altogether and find a different avenue that fit that lifestyle. And it's really sad to see, as I get further and further along, there are less and less of my female friends and counterparts still in the industry. And I think that's something that I know, again, we'll understand each other in that, but it's hard for others to relate to us if they don't have that same pressure on their shoulders of, the time and the hours that you need to put in. But I think the change is really going to come from more companies valuing that quality of life aspect and understanding how to really be profitable and not put as much pressure on their team members. Because as women, it's a really intimidating place to be if you do want to have a family and you do want to have those things later on in life.
Great, thank you. Following suit with that as well, how can we encourage more women to get into the AEC and technology fields?
I would say career fairs, like going to the younger generation. I know that we recently had an intern that joined us, and she was female, and I fought for her to have that job. We interviewed another male that was just as qualified and just as good, and she was just a rock star, and she came out and she showed what she was worth, and we've given her an offer to join us, and it's just constantly going out. And unfortunately for us, having to search for women and teach them that, like, hey, there are other aspects than just field work and construction. Like, there's other things. Like, most of us, we are all office people in laser scanning. Like, there's more opportunities that aren't showcased as much. And I think just teaching and constantly reaching and going through the education paths and going to colleges, going to technical schools, and doing stuff like this, doing panels and like showcasing women in the industry, and that like we are here and we're valuable.
Yeah, so I asked the land surveyors earlier what were they going to do, because they're kind of in the same situation or they're in the opposite, where they had so many and they're losing, and we are trying to do the opposite. And my thought was, I was in high school, and I think getting that younger generation before college, because college sometimes is too late. Like, not all of us can afford to switch our careers and pay for a different degree or whatever. So I think that really penetrating the high school kids freshmen and sophomores who don't know what they want to do yet, I think that's huge. And female or male, like just growing the industry in general, it's really valuable. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the lack of education is really what it's all about. When I was a kid, I didn't know what anyone did at an office. My dad was in car sales, and that's all I knew, and I didn't know of what jobs were outside of that. And having my cousin pursue interior design, having my best friend's dad be a contractor, I was like, what do you guys do? And they really are the reason why I got educated. And like they're mentioning, getting that information out to high schoolers and junior hires, really expanding their mind. But it's not necessarily educating them on what to do, it's also giving them tools and college suggestions and financial aid opportunities. So there's a lot of things that I think high schools could be a little bit better about in their programs, and letting them understand what the different avenues are, especially in, I'll be honest, the poor neighborhoods. Coming from my high school, there was it was also a long time ago, so that probably doesn't help. But I think the high schools and junior highs are a really important place also.
I think, whether you're a man or a woman, I think just talk about what you do. Go home, tell your female cousins or friends or, any woman in your life, but, rather than, assuming there might not be any interest, just push them, talk about what you do, see what they pick up on, suggest colleges, universities, diplomas they could get, teach them about the tools. I think that would be a good place to start. And if you are a woman, then be that example that you needed when you were younger. I wish I had someone like that in my life that guided me here. Of course, I have my professor, Dr. Cheryl Staub French, but the more the merrier, right? So be that inspiration that you wish you had, or be that force of support that you needed when you were younger. So I think as women, we also have to take control of that and be that example. And whether it's blasting it on social media, use the hashtag RCN 2021. Yeah.
Great. Similar to that question or that answer, thank you. How are you showcasing your successes? So how are you showcasing that so that other women can see themselves in the positions that you're in?
A lot of LinkedIn posts. and a lot of reaching out. Like when I started out with 4D animation, I didn't have many tools or really anybody to give me any guidance, and I just went down a rabbit hole on LinkedIn and just started searching, and I found a woman out of Australia, and she talked to me for a couple hours, like just telling me what she does, what's her workflow, like what program she uses, and she still to this day will just randomly send me stuff like, hey, this would be great to watch, like, hey, this is great knowledge for you to do. And I think that's just what all of us need to do, is just continue to blast what we do. We all do something completely different from each other.
Yeah, I think advertising is a big thing. I think advertising can be used in a good way and also a negative way, because you don't want to come off like you're arrogant. You want to be more humble in the situation. But I think when you present yourself to nonprofits or schools, that's really the main goal, is to get the word out there, and then you don't have to feel like, you know, you're trying to let everyone know what you do. But LinkedIn is such a good tool, because that is how we show other professionals what we do and the quality of our work.
Great. And we talked a little bit about this yesterday too, but can you talk a little bit about some of the things that you've had to do to persevere in your career and push through this male-dominated industry that you've been working in?
Go ahead, you got this. You got it.
No?
I don't know. I'll break the ice again. So I touched on it earlier. It's just working 10 times harder. I say 2 times, but sometimes it's 10. And kind of just the constant battle of proving them wrong. Like proving everyone who doubts me wrong, because at the end of the day, I'm going to be successful, and I'm going to do what I want to do, and I'm not going to let some male colleague, boss, whoever stop me. And so it's forever battle. I'm sure. I'd like to think in 10 years, 15 years, 50 years, it'll be different, but it's going to take time. So just supporting each other and persevering. So.
Yeah, I would say having a lot of determination in yourself. Just piggyback off of Ivy, it's like there's all times where we have want to just quit and have a breakdown of like, I can't do this anymore. But knowing like, unfortunately for me, I know my team needs me. I know I bring value, and they tell me constantly that I bring value. But there are days where I'm in the field and I'm unfortunately being harassed, and I'm just like, why do I put up with this? Why? I could do something else. But unfortunately, this is what I love to do. I love my job. I love watching buildings be built, and it's fascinating, and every single project is a completely different venture that we don't see, and that's unfortunately what we love. We love solving problems. And so it's just mainly having determination and unfortunately having a tough skin to get through everything.
Definitely tough skin, for sure. You're going to hear things, you're going to have comments made at you. You can be at the most perfect place, and sometimes it's still going to happen. It's not always your company, it's a trade partner, it's something that isn't in control, and really just making sure that you address it and you handle yourself in the best way you can, and making a point that you're not going to let them ruin your day. You're not going to let them get the best of you and deter you from leaving, because we want females to stay, and you've lost a lot of your friends, and we don't want it to be that way. So.
Yeah, I'd say that it's definitely not easy as a woman, and especially as a woman of color. I'd say I've had quite a few roadblocks in my life, but you know, sometimes people are more interested in talking about your nails when you're on a construction site, or about your hair, or the color of your skin, or, you know, different things. But at the end of the day, you know, all you could do is keep your eye on the prize. You know what your goals are. I have a point to prove. That just puts fire in me. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the pressure that I've received, especially starting out in the early 2000s, actually gave me a fire to be where I am now. So I can't be so upset that everyone was maybe not kind all the time, or maybe made a comment that was really inappropriate, but I just kept pushing and pushing, because one, I wanted to be successful, and I really didn't care what anyone's opinion was of me, but I also wanted to set a stage for the kind of atmosphere that I wanted women to feel comfortable in. And being that we're only a few years old, we're predominantly female at my firm, and sometimes, you know, clients or contractors or engineers ask and want to confirm our abilities, but you know, they're the strongest women I know in the industry, and I didn't hire them because of any other reason than their qualifications. And I think that's just something that you have to keep persevering, because there are a lot of great men and women out there that will recognize the skills that you bring to the table that are different than maybe in other companies. And if you just keep pursuing the information, the knowledge, you stay humble, and you always know that you're not going to know everything, you can always stay competitive in the industry. But the perseverance that, you know, they're talking about, sometimes it is just really hard. And I'll just be honest, and you know, I try to be as open-minded as I possibly can, because no one's perfect, and there have been just as many women who try to ruin my career as there have been men. And so I don't want to make it seem like it's only the men in the room, because you know, I've had women try to destroy everything that I built up over 15 years, and I took that and ran with it and started a firm. And so there are things that happen, but the other uncomfortable thing to talk about is the sexual assault, and that is what is hard to overcome. And that is what makes you step away from companies, when your bosses don't care and they let it happen because the, you know, $5,000 they're going to profit off the project is more important than how someone's talking to you in a room. And that is something that has not really gone away. But you know, it's odd in my situation. My husband is here with me, and he's our CFO, and we go to meetings together to establish fees and put contracts together. I don't really get the comments that I used to get when it was me and another female showing up to a meeting, and it's interesting thinking about that change. So persevering is so much about the support that you have around you, to be honest, and getting rid of that negative energy and, you know, pushing through.
Yeah, I'd like to add a little into that. It's just also being involved with women like this, like seeing them succeed also wants to make me succeed even more, because if they're able to do it, I sure as hell know I am. And seeing, like, especially on LinkedIn, just seeing, oh my God, that's amazing, just commenting, like, that's wonderful, like, that's congrats. Like, I love when I just get, like, small comments from women I don't know, like, that's awesome, congratulations, like that, it really goes a long way.
And just one more question. I don't know if we have a couple of questions here as well, but since you've started in this space, do you think things have improved for women?
Little by little, I believe. I think it's best, especially finding someone or having a team around you that you know will support you no matter what. Even if in some cases, you know, we are all human, we all are going to mess up, we're all going to make a mistake, and just having a team behind you that is going to continue to support you even through those failures. Like, we know we're going to fail. That's just human nature, and just having somebody to support you, whether they're male or female, whether you're on their team or not. Like, that's all very important.
I think finding the right company, that is a big thing. Like, I am so fortunate to work at DPR, as cheesy as it sounds, but that's hard in construction. So
It is.
yeah, I'm very fortunate, and I think that if I know like another female's looking for a job, like if I see it on LinkedIn, I'm like, hey, you know, DPR's hiring, because I know it's a good place and it's a safe place, and so doing that on LinkedIn and encouraging people to like really do the effort, deep dive their website, like look at their initiatives, and you'll hopefully land in the right spot.
Great. We have a couple minutes for questions.
So first I want to say you're all badasses, so thank you for being up there and doing this. I think this was a great idea, Matt. We do need more women in construction, and this sort of, I want to tap into a little bit of the why behind that. I don't know if you guys talked about this, but have you run into any situations or come across anything that you felt was an advantage from being a woman in construction?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you really well. Did you say advantage?
Yeah, have you noticed any advantages to being a female in construction in terms of?
I get offered coconut water in the field by the subs. I get offered all kinds of things from the subs. They are like, do you need a water? Do you need a Powerade? But like, pretty much it's just like, for me, it's my bosses, my three managers, like they trust in me. they push me to be better, and that's what I really appreciate. So that I would feel that would be my advantage. My team that pushes me, that knows what I'm capable of and knows the skills that I have, and they only want to improve them.
I mean, just fundamentally being a woman in a man's industry, you have a different perspective. And in initiatives, not even just being female, but minorities, like, I can sympathize slightly better, but I'm never going to know. But I think I have a better awareness to push initiatives for everybody. So I think that helps a lot.
I have not really experienced any advantages, if I'm being honest. I'll probably be that simple.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
But they made a good point, though. I agree
They
with
did.
that. Yeah.
First of all, thank you for having the courage to be up here and share your guys' perspectives, because these uncomfortable things that you're bringing up are very important for us to discuss. I think they come from these weird power dynamics that we create at very early ages. And me as a father to a 7-year-old daughter, I'm asking, what would you recommend I do to help her to understand that, to help to guide her through that? Maybe even also my son, right? He's 9. How do I help him understand how to be better in these situations?
Don't limit what you teach them just because of their gender roles. Your 7-year-old daughter is a lot stronger than you think, even though she's pretty young. But I know we have all faced, we were not allowed to do something simply because we were a woman. We weren't allowed to do something in the field because of our gender. Knowing well enough we were fully capable of doing it, we were stopped in our tracks just because of our gender. So I would say teach them well-rounded, both aspects, Most men are boys, cars and stuff like that, like they're more of the engineering side. Also teach that to your daughters, because you never know what they're going to be interested in. And if she doesn't like it, just, okay.
I mean, I'm not a mother, but, this is something I've always thought about, doing when I become a mother. And, growing up, there was always such a thing as girls' toys and boys' toys. And me and my brother, I would get the dolls, he would get the cars and the dump trucks, and that's all I ever wanted. But I wasn't allowed to really play with them, right? They weren't bought for me. Buy a dump truck for your daughter. Buy her little pieces, little scaffolds she can put together. Talk to her about your day. Tell her when you're driving by a construction building, see what sparks an interest. It's never too complicated, maybe a little bit, but just be that inspiration so that she can look up to you and say, I want to do what he's doing. And all you could really do is tell her that she could do whatever she puts her mind to. I feel like that's something I got from my family that brought me here today, even though they didn't get me the right toys. But, I was always told, as long as you put your mind to it, you can achieve anything in this world. Your gender doesn't matter, your race doesn't matter, nothing matters. It's just about perseverance, so I hope that helps.
So I have a comment and a question. So comment Ivy, it's never too late to go to land surveying. My question is kind of keeping with the theme of the day. Do you see that improved technologies, are those creating increased opportunities for women?
I didn't hear that perfectly.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, I hear myself really well, but I guess you guys can't hear me. My question is, keeping with the theme of the day, do you see that the improved technologies, are they creating greater opportunities for women in the workplace?
Yeah, I think reality capture, I always liked technology. That was something I always enjoyed. I used to say I was like a software junkie. I've taught myself SolidWorks, CAD, Revit. I wanted to learn them all. And I think that specifically reality capture, the stuff looks really cool. And that sounds really dumb, but when you're a 10-year-old kid and you want to have a drone, you can do that for a living. That's a real thing, and it looks neat. And I don't think a girl or a boy thinks a drone looks any less cool based on gender. And so I think even though we don't want to always spend the money on what something looks like, I think for children and things, that's really helpful. So, yeah.
I also think technology levels the playing field a little bit.
Sure.
So in our experience, most of our 3D renderings are done in-house, and it's easier to control the model, it's easier to control the accuracy. And my fastest render is a female, and she's just all about learning everything she can learn about that model. And And that's where, you know, at some point it doesn't really matter what the gender is, it's just the skill and what they're bringing to the table. And there's a lot of things that, you know, can be measured in different ways, but technology really does give each person a level playing field, and you could easily analyze their skill level based on what they're producing. And one might be more proficient in AutoCAD or Revit, and the other might be more proficient in 3D modeling. But it really gives everyone a clear look, especially in an industry where accuracy is incredibly important, because inaccuracy costs whoever's responsible for that a lot of money. So, you know, I think that really has been helpful.
Hi, ladies. Thank you for sitting on the panel. I'm going to ask you a question that I often get asked, which is a little bit awkward. We talked about how leadership is heavily male-occupied. I use occupied, not dominated. In this industry, what can men in leadership positions do to foster more females getting into their company, getting into their teams, and not come off like creepers? Because it is a difficult thing to be a man. Come on, join my team, and not have it come off sometimes uncomfortably.
Well, maybe I can start. So I ended up at the worldwide firm that I was at for the great portion of my career because of my male professor. And there's something, well, he would see me come in with my Kinko's uniform on back when Kinko's was still Kinko's and not FedEx office, and just knew that I was working full-time and going to architecture school full-time. And he's like, you know what, we have an internship opportunity, why don't you apply? He opened up that internship opportunity to any student pursuing architecture and interior design in the LA County. That's a huge county. I interviewed, I presented it to people that were not him, and I got the internship. So I felt like he wasn't giving me a handout, he was just giving me information to better my career, because I was at a very small residential firm on top of working at Kinko's at the time. He knew that what I was gaining from that small firm wasn't going to get me anywhere in my career. So I think that's an example of leadership, because he ended up being my boss. And so once he became my boss, in a non-creepy way, he would guide me, he would instruct me on my strengths and my weaknesses, and helped me grow in the places where I needed to grow. And it wasn't a pat on the back or a hug here and there, it was proper. There was no feelings of intimidation, but I think that's really it. You know, you present the opportunity. He just saw that I was a hard worker, and that's really all it came down to for him.
Maybe unconscious bias, men being everyone, but if in the specific question of how can men be more helpful, think about your unconscious bias. When you see a female on a job site, and I was talking to Madison about this, every time I'm on a job site, it's like, oh, can I help you carry this? Can I help you like lift this up? Do you need help? And like, in the tone of which it's asked, it is not a typical question that someone else would come in if they were not a female. And ask yourself, why are you asking that question? Why do you feel the need to intrude into all of these different things? And sometimes it is helpful, sometimes it's genuine, and I've had that and I can read that as a female, 'cause it's been asked so many times. But your unconscious bias and questioning it and asking yourself why you think the certain things that you do.
For me, from a leadership aspect, it would be creating a safe space for your female employees, making it to where, like, if I was to vocalize any kind of harassment or sexual assault, I know my team would handle it. I know something would be done about it. And that's really something that's very important to all of us, because we know we're going to experience, we don't know when it's going to happen, but we know at some point it will happen. And unfortunately having those things happen to us, you know, you learn a lot and you're more cautious when you go out, but having somebody that you can trust and that may be higher up than you in the company, they will do something about it. Just having a safe space.
Just add one more thing. I think about this sometimes, and we were talking about this yesterday too. I think it's kind of sad how a lot times, more than not, you might think something, you know, you don't want to approach a woman because you don't want to come off creepy, but when you're not approaching her, she's losing that opportunity every time. So I think it's okay to just be open and just go for it. Have that conversation. Like, don't hold back thinking you're going to come off a certain type of way, because you don't really think that way when you're talking to a male, right? So I think more times than not, it's fine, just go for it. And I think a part of your question was, how do we attract those people into the company? And I'd say, a lot of times, I feel like it's right under your eyes. I feel like you don't need to reach out outside of your company. There's so many women within the company that you can train and, you know, get the additional experience that they need and to help them grow to that position. I don't think we always need to do outreach outside of our companies to fill up those positions.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you guys very much. Let's give them a round of hands.